Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Friday Night Live. Mark Vittori, Sean Floyd Pereira, producer Ryan, and the cameras. And today we are jumping into another hot topic, which is talking about how to avoid tall poppy syndrome when it comes to getting into any form of, not necessarily investment, but just anything in life, I think. Whatever we mentally or financially invest into. But we wanted to go through today a little bit about, and Sean, you can elaborate more as well. We wanted to go into a little bit more about, I think we talked about it earlier, the key players of the world and how a lot of them actually are probably unknown to the average Joe. And there's quite a lot of them. And there's reason as to why that's the case. And we'll probably start off today by talking about the fact that tall poppy syndrome is probably something that we need to factor in first before we even worry about how do we get ourselves into one of those positions, or how do you identify these type of people, and how can you incorporate someone like that in your life as well. And I guess, Sean, I'll take it to you to begin with today, is tall poppy syndrome. It's something we've spoken about here in Australia for many, many years, and we're actually notorious for it here in this country. Would you agree?
100%, Mark. And I think when you're talking about tall poppy syndrome in general, it's important to understand that what do the people want? Let's ask that question first. What do the people want? And what's proven itself over time is, I think, and America thinks these days, people love a redemption story. So when I say people love a redemption story, before you say I've hit the nail on the head on this topic, people love the fact that tall poppy syndrome is something that's coined in Australia, where people become too successful and it is our goal to drag them down, bring people down, point out their flaws. But let's say that's happened over a period of years. What we tend to love as humans is naturally the story of the underdog, the story of what if. It's a grand final against the big underdogs versus the people who are supposed to be the favorites by the bookies, by the statistics, so forth, so on. And we still love the fact that there is a chance. And that's what it really boils down to, is the fact that there is a chance for upsets in this world to happen. We've seen in sporting events over years upsets happening left, right, and center. The story of the underdog, the story of the villain. We're in the year 2023. 2023 while filming this episode. Last year, 2022, we had a World Cup, FIFA World Cup, for example, and Messi won a World Cup for Argentina, right? Which was, Argentina was in a drought for 20 odd years after Maradona, and then you have Messi winning the World Cup. Now, in the last 10 years, there was no dispute he was already the greatest footballer of all time. But when you look back at that redemption story, the arc, if you really look back at articles, interviews, peer reviews, there was this almost villain-esque approach for Messi, because he had reached the top of professional football, except the international stage. He goes ahead and wins the World Cup, and now he is goated in the sense that there is now no dispute. There is now no argument against him being the greatest of all time. And what I've noticed, Mark, is that every human that reaches the pinnacle of what they do achieves a status of being top dog, villain dog, and then the GOAT dog. LeBron James is going through the same thing in the NBA today. So if you ask a lot of people currently who's the greatest basketballer of all time, and rightfully so, the answer is, if I asked you this question, you would tell me pretty much straight away it's
Michael Jordan.
It's MJ, and my answer is it's MJ. But in logic, are we right? The answer is no, we're probably not right. Your answer is MJ, my answer is MJ, but it's actually LeBron James. It is LeBron James for sure, because most points of all time, multiple championships, had more competition, fiercer competition than what MJ had. But why do we like MJ? Why do we like MJ? It's because we've finished his side of the battles. We don't need to hear his side of the story. It's proven, it's done. And there will always be fairy tales and arguments of different generations, versing each other. It's like saying Pele was the greatest footballer of all time versus what Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo have done, right? Now, how do you quantify tall poppy syndrome? This is an interesting topic. How do you quantify what is tall poppy syndrome? So for the people listening at home today, tall poppy syndrome is something where a certain level of success is reached, and then the greater populace is trying to bring down that individual for reasons outside for why they are number one, right?
Yep.
So why do you think more so in Australian culture that is prevalent than, let's say, a culture in a third world economy, Mark? What do you reckon the grounds are, or the background of that is?
Good question. I actually think it's because of the fact that here in this country we're spoilt for choice in many different ways. All right, we have the freedom to do whatever we want, realistically, and we also have a government that, you know, at the end of the day, if we're in a spot of bother, they will support you. All right, we know that for a fact. Right, people will argue that and tell us that they don't support us enough, blah blah blah. But if we compare ourselves to other nations, then I think we can all quite comfortably agree that they support us enough. Now, going back to what you mentioned, actually, was interesting. You know, talking about, let's say, the specific athletes, you know, and they are the greatest in that era. All right. LeBron James, of course, is a different beast to what Michael Jordan was.
Of course.
Right. But the pace of the game is a lot different now than what it was back in 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And the same with rugby league, the same with football,
True.
soccer, the same with any sport. Look at David Beckham. He's always had that GOAT status, but when he was a Manchester United player, everyone hated him in the EPL.
Of course,
he was
they
so
did.
good.
Of course,
very
they
good.
did.
Great free kick. And I'm a Liverpool supporter, so of course, naturally, I just had a natural hate for him. I didn't even know what for, right?
But you were born hating it.
Born hating, right? But now look at him and go, wow, look what he's done with the Miami team, and, you know,
Which is amazing, by the way.
It's
Amazing,
awesome.
yeah.
It's awesome, right?
And dragging Messi out there too.
Yeah, right. And you're looking at it, and there was a photo. I saw a photo get posted up the other day. You may or may not have seen it.
How he was watching from the background.
And all the mobile phones around. And he was just talking about how he was in the moment. Yeah. And that, at least in my eyes anyway, gave him an even bigger status to say, wow, you know, you aspired to be someone like that.
Yep.
But 20 years ago, I wasn't aspiring to be a David Beckham. All right. Even though he was a great football player, don't get me wrong. And a lot of children were looking at him like an MJ back then.
True.
But now a lot of children are looking at the next guy and the next guy. And this will continue happening for the next million years that human societies on Earth. But if we look back 100 years ago, who was the greatest boxer back then? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about 100, but I know about 60 with Rocky Marciano. And then it became Ali.
Ali, correct.
Tyson.
And then there's Floyd Mayweather.
Then Floyd Money May.
And it's always going to be the case, right? So I think tall poppy syndrome probably comes in waves. And it's, you know, I think as you get older as well, I personally believe if you, when I say you've done okay in life, you know, you've given it a good crack. You don't have to necessarily be the top 1%. You don't have to be anything in particular, but you can sit back comfortably and go, well, you know, maybe it didn't pan out like I thought it would, but I'm happy with the effort I've put in. You start respecting a lot of people, whether they're young or old, and they're doing better than you.
Such an interesting point you mentioned, Mark, about respect, because what I feel is that if people have reached a certain level of pinnacle in their profession, let's say someone's become the pinnacle of what a ideal software developer does, or the pinnacle of what a manufacturing tradesperson does. You might not be recognized in social media, you might not be known or spoken about on social media, but there is a certain level of respect when you see other peers in their respective industries doing well. For example, we joke about this sometimes that, let's say there's a Ferrari or a Lamborghini prancing down the street. And what does the usual average Australian say to that? The usual average Australian goes, two things. Either, oh, it's just tax money anyway they're writing off, or they blame it on drugs and illegal operations. So it's just drugs, that's why he's got the Lambo. So the affinity to blaming success on illegal operations, or let's say, non-productive ventures, is, I feel, a system that is stemmed from the home. And why I say it stemmed from the home is because imagine you're growing up hearing your environment talk about the fact that, oh, the rich have done something against the poor to become rich. If that's the philosophy you've grown up on, it's very hard to shake that, because you meet someone who's financially successful and then you say, who did you have to stick to get that? You know, in corporate culture, we use, really dirty language about it. We say, whose did you have to in order to get that? And I didn't say, you don't even have to use a beep, producer Ryan. I made it easy for you here. But everyone at home knows exactly what I meant.
Absolutely.
good things come in threes, right? So,
What, meat and 2 veg?
anyway, so going back to the point, I feel that there is a cultural stigma in Australia where tall poppy syndrome, the fact that it's coined here, does play a part in 2 things. One is the respect and acknowledgement of people that have done it tough to break a certain barrier and get to where they want to be.
Yep.
And, you know, last week we actually did an amazing episode on figuring out the struggle between where you are and where you want to be. So I feel there's a lack of respect there. And then there's also a lack of, I'd say, not cognition, but a lack of awareness around that the fact that people can decide to embark on that path and go for it instead of blaming it on, you know, I'm not where I want to be because of him, her, or they, or them, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to get at is I feel that at the end of the day, if you're wired as a human who's not a victim of circumstance, but you're someone who says circumstances are outside my control, whatever I can control, I want to be who I am.
Yes. And
then you give due props to it. I think your environment matters on whether you view tall poppy syndrome as reality or whether you view it as just that, which is syndrome, tall poppy syndrome. I don't know, producer Ryan, if you want to read out to us what the definition of syndrome means, I'd love to reiterate it to the audience. But just a quick question to your end, Mark, to facilitate the point is, what are some examples that you might have in your experience where you've seen tall poppy syndrome happen either to Australians or global personas like presidents of different countries, so forth, so on? Have you seen some examples of a clear evidence of tall poppy syndrome?
Yeah. And again, reverting back to the sports and the athletes, right? We see it all the time, right? We see athletes go through a lot of. I'm going to use them as the point of discussion today because I think they're a very good example. Everyone sees them in some way, shape, or form. There's a big thing with. I know this is not necessarily tall poppy syndrome, let's say, but it is more racism than anything. But, you know, there's been AFL players over the years that have been, you know, racially abused and things like that, right?
While still earning more than the average Australian.
While they're on the field, when they get off the field, even the Test cricket recently, there was, you know, how many times were the English giving stick to the Australian players when they're getting off the field,
right?
Things like that. And usually I've seen some video footage, it's always an old bloke that's, you know, mouthing off, and then as soon as one of the young fellas turn around from the team and says, you know, you want to repeat that again? Oh, sorry, mate. You know, it backtracks very quickly.
It happens in the NBA all the time.
Correct, right? And, you know, again, like there's athletes deal with a lot of, I think, abuse, let's say, rather than tall poppy syndrome. It's the next level, right? And again, it's all, you know, all part of it, and they got to be big boys enough to deal with it. But at the end of the day, I think that's probably the most evident version of it in today's day and age, because everyone would see it. Everyone would even be a part of it at some stage of your life. Like, I'm sure people out there listening to this have gone to a football game, a cricket game, basketball, whatever it may be, and you've heckled the other side. You know what I mean? Like, that is a version of it. That's a form of it that we don't realise.
Sure.
You know, and things like that, you know, it relays. I think I've noticed as I've gotten older, it's easy to turn into tall poppy syndrome like that, because the next new kid on the block comes out and says, hey, everyone, look at me, I'm a superstar. And you go, oh, mate, this guy's he's going to be washed up in 2 years, 5 years, right? And
you were right about 99% of the time.
Correct, which is the truth. That's why you think that. But then you also got to kind of be conscious of that and go, hang on, you know, whether or not I agree with what this person's saying, give them the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, you know what, thumbs up for giving it a crack to start with. You know, that's the first thing. And I think, you know, again, I'm not sugarcoating it, saying we have to, you know, be nice towards people. But I think, you know, from an evidence standpoint, tall poppy syndrome happens every single day in our lives. We all do it and go through it some way, shape or form. Even people that are listening, you've all got a boss that you know, behind their back, you're going, fucking dickhead, you know, like you're carrying on, right? And just telling them like, oh, this guy doesn't know what we should be doing. Like, everyone always says it. Mm-hmm. Everyone always says it at one point in their life, right? And again, like that as well, like if you start noticing that that's happening more often than you talking good about the team, then you know you're not in the right environment either, right? And I think that should be something that is noticed and seen, because unfortunately we look at, let's say in this country, the dollar value of something as opposed to the value of it, or let's say the mental value of it, right? And by saying, you know, there's a good bunch of people here, but I'm going to neglect that in order to chase a bigger dollar, right? Or I'm going to deal with these people who are shit and I just don't like who they are, and I'm going to, basically try and cut them at the knees all the time in order to just earn a good dollar. So I think tall poppy syndrome is a lot more common than what we think. And I think, from an example standpoint, like I said, going back to the athletes, that for me is probably the biggest eye-opening way of looking at it, to say, they deal with it a lot, and, they keep getting more successful, which is interesting as well. And I think there's something to kind of look at from a bit of a devil's advocate perspective here, a different angle, I should say, a bit of a lighter angle is, while the hecklers are out there giving them grief, those guys continue to earn more. They continue to get better. They continue to attract more abundance.
Yeah.
Right? In every way, shape, and form. And it's very interesting because it's like they also came from, most of the time, the slums in some way, shape, or form. They didn't necessarily get, sprinkled on earth from, all the riches, and, they were blessed with talent, but, doesn't mean that they were blessed with finances. And finances, we know, can't create talent in a lot of people, if any people at all. I think it just comes from within. Mm-hmm. So, that's what we also got to realize as well, in my eyes, is to say that, if we also try to be more conscious of the tall poppy syndrome within us all, because it can be there, we'll probably have a more enjoyable life as well.
I think you're absolutely right. And the other thing as well is leading into the whole theory where there's many different forms of it. We've heard about, being guilty for being successful. Should that be something that people are conscious about? Now, let's be honest, people are automatically conscious about this, right? Let's say you reach a certain level of success at a certain age and you are conscious about not wanting to show it in order to avoid tall poppy syndrome being your downfall. This is an extremely interesting topic. And I think it comes from awareness of what tall poppy syndrome is, what is the underdog stigma, and how do I sort of overcome, right? So everyone knows that at certain points in time, even in your own individual life, you might have been boastful at a time when you didn't need to be. But also what I believe is there's times in people's lives where they've been extremely humble when they didn't need to be as well. And this definition of humble keeps floating around, where some people say it's not respecting any of their achievements. Some people believe it's not believing their own hype. There's a variety of definitions out there right now, yeah? I'm sure the dictionary will give us a nice, simple, plain one. But
one thing I wanted to say as well, going on that, how you're saying some people want to curb themselves from, getting out and showing that success. I think one thing I learned, and it's a very common saying, is that fortune favors the bold, right? And I think that is something that everyone needs to always remember. And again, forget just financial side of things, right? Fortune in regards to recognition, fortune in regards to abundance of so many different bits and pieces within your life. You've got to be out there. You've got to actually speak something into existence, believe it. You don't have to be a dickhead about it.
True.
But you've got to be, I guess, so self-believing of it that, nothing gets in your way to get to where you need to get to.
I think you're right. And just even if you ask Google today, ladies and gentlemen, that first point definition of humble, it's having or showing a modest or low estimate of one's importance. But going out there and telling people that you genuinely believe they're wrong about an idea, that doesn't mean you're not humble. It might come across that when you're conversating, it might come across as arrogance. Doesn't mean you're not humble. Because if you're humble and you believe that your importance is quite low in the grand universe scheme of things, but you genuinely believe something has to be done according to your rule book because you've spent the hours, you've done the maths, and you realize that this is how it should be, and you're very vocal about it, even if that comes across in a brash way, I want everyone to know today that does not mean you are not humble. Being humble means that you believe in yes, whatever you're doing is right, and at the same time, you're treating yourself as someone having low importance in the grand scheme of things. And what does that mean, grand scheme of things? So tall poppy syndrome, there's a variety of angles that we can discuss about it. And we've touched on a lot today as well. One thing we wanted to segue into before wrapping up the Friday Night Live for this afternoon is a few extremely commonly asked questions to investment agents around Google's most searched investment questions. So getting into those, just for a little bit of a fun little segue, let's get into those in a moment. So, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of question number 1, I'll just bring these up. It's the 20 must-answer questions about investing. So, we'll go maybe one by one, and we will look at a couple of things, and I'll maybe give you the spreadsheet as well to ask me a few of these from here. Mm-hmm. So here's an interesting mindset question for you, Mark. Can you identify the cultural messages and personal mindsets about money that destroy your investing peace of mind? And it's so funny because we spoke about tall poppy syndrome today.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think as well, something we should probably keep in mind, let's say from an investment point of view, is don't grow too quick, too fast kind of thing. Like don't try to outdo people that have been doing something for 10 years if you're just jumping into it for the first year.
Right.
Accept where you're at, respect where you're at, and just know that, okay, there are going to be people that are better than you in a certain field, let's say, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Accept it, understand your position, move on, and then, I feel like that you're not focusing on other people then. You're staying in your own lane. You're focusing on the work ahead, right? You're getting those small wins under your belt, and they start to compound.
True. I agree 100%.
Now, something I wanted to ask you as well, Sean. Anyone here?
Oh, yeah. Like from the most commonly asked investment ones, fire away.
Alrighty. Have you devised a clear-cut method for measuring the success or failure of your portfolio or a portfolio?
The answer to that, long story short, is no, I haven't. And what is the question really asking us in this instance is there a clear-cut measure for talking about volatility in the portfolio? Volatility-wise, no, because I don't tend to buy assets that fluctuate beyond reasonable measure. For example, I'm currently not invested into businesses that are a possible net number one day and then a completely different net number the other day. My investment spread goes to the level of real estate, shares, and that's about it. So real estate and shares, right? So even though shares might be different, it's an expectancy that you are purchasing. And is this necessary to have a clear dividing line on where you draw the line? I don't believe so if you're investing in the right strategy or the right product. And the reason I say that is, okay, when does someone really sell their piece of real estate that they can't hold on to? This comes down to a lot of factors, right? Ability to hold on, your holding cost potential. Is the market really in shambles? Should you be selling at that time? Can you work extra shifts to make up to hold on to that asset? And at the same time, is it a generally good market to sell off your asset that is a bad investment? In real estate, let's call it this way. If tomorrow all my rents went to 20% and the market halved, it would make no sense for me to sell the assets if the market halved. But let's say the market stayed the same and my rents dropped to 20%, I would have to be forced to sell asset one by one in order to stay afloat for cash flow reasons. So it's a very interesting question if there's a clear dividing line between knowing where my personal volatility is. And the answer is no. But the answer is no, not because of unpreparedness. The answer is no because I wasn't an idiot in the first place. I'm doing something based on at least 50, 40, 60 years worth of proven methodologies, and I understand the risks associated with it. But this is a very interesting question because I believe, should people have a bottom line to realize when to cut the cord?
Yeah.
I do have one in business that I work in daily, but I don't have one for my personal investments because if you really work on good, healthy investment philosophy, invest what you're willing to lose. And then if you lose it all, it's okay. You were willing to lose in the first place.
Well, the thing is, it's hard.
I know it can't be applied to real estate all the time.
Yeah, correct. But I think it's interesting, hey, because at the end of the day, I mean, you can't put an exit strategy, let's say, on a personal portfolio because you don't know when your last day is up anyway. All right, that's something none of us can really measure. And if we could, I think everyone would have a very clear exit strategy to their portfolios by saying, I know I'm going to die at 85 years of age, so when I'm 65, I'm going to sell off all my assets and be liquid and just go live in the Amazon for the next 20 years or whatever it may be, right? So, I just think you make a very valid point, actually, Sean. You know, there really can't be a very definitive exit because we really don't know what the end game will look like or when it comes.
Awesome. I've got a fun question for you. Do you consistently and predictably achieve market returns in your personal endeavors?
I'd like to think so. I'd like to think so.
Across a 50-year horizon.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Producer Ryan's the goat at this. I mean, every 50 years he gets it right. No, but going back to it, consistently and predictably achieve your personalized market returns.
Yeah, I think I am. I think it's and again, depending on where you're looking at across your, I like to measure things a lot. I think we've discussed this a few times before on a personal note, and it's something that makes a massive difference is when you do start measuring, in your earlier years of getting started, you can really start noticing trends and patterns and what's giving you a better return, what to double down on, what not to, focus on too much, things like that. And that, just taking that, that discipline in the first couple of years to do that measurement to then go, okay, to confidently answer this and say, yeah, certainly on track, and again, do I know what the market holds there for me? And I'm not just talking, from an investment point of view financially, but, just in life in general. We don't know what the life ahead of us leaves in our path. But, I think we can certainly say that whatever it does leave in our path, for us to swallow up, we can deal with it quite easily, quite confidently, stress-free. You could put me in a room on fire and I'd be like, okay, well, where's the door? Let me exit, like it instead of...
And if there isn't one, great, we need a door. Let's figure out how to find that door.
Correct.
We'll create our own door.
Run through the gyprock.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it. Not many other people can do it.
But yeah.
This is great. I think from today's episode, which has been amazing in terms of the many nuances within initial conversation, I think we're almost ready to have a very special rapid round robin.
I'm down.
As in rapid round robin in the sense that the answers are typically curtailed to a fast sentence or two or a word or two.
So you want me to shoot away?
I do.
Oh, okay. I'll shoot my shot. Round rapid robin.
Best advice your parents ever gave you?
Wow.
We're
going to do that topic. Plus your one, okay?
I don't have one yet, but yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, great.
God. Best advice your parents have ever given you. Jeez. Sean?
Be a good person first and trust in God first. Let everything else happen.
Besides the fact that I've always heard "wake up to yourself" from my parents, which I
this
think
is
I have.
The best, not the most repetitive advice.
Okay. I think it would be a very simple, always be very thankful for anything. Just be very thankful, which I think is very, I don't know. It's needed in this world.
You're so right. And I have to give you a big thank you for that. That was an amazing rapid round robin. Very interesting too. Giving people an inside life into inside the coats.
Yeah.
Grab the coach.
And the boys we are. Well, that was a good one.
That was a great one.
That was another good one. We've been having some very good Friday Night Lives lately. Kesh is still off in fatherhood.
Yep.
Daddy world.
Daddy world.
And
Zaddy world.
The boys are holding it down. So again, guys, thank you very much for another episode of Friday Night Live. Feel free to leave us some comments, subscribe, do what you need to do. Let us know what you want us to talk about as well next week if you want. We're happy to go through it all. And until then, have a good one.
Have a great one.
Bye-bye.